Hey everyone, it's Allie, Coram, and Justin Nielsen here with a look at the market for Monday, October 30th, where we saw a strong start to the week, but we didn't get too excited yet.
That's right. We've been here before, right? Strong starts that don't finish, but that doesn't mean this one can't.
Yeah,
But we will reserve
we
our
can.
judgment for a little while. Meanwhile, we're also going to talk about a few stocks, including Meta Platforms and Ollie's Bargain Outlet, as well as FTAI Aviation.
Okay, we'll take a look at those three stocks, but first let's take a look at the major indexes. The Nasdaq today up 1.2%, same for the S&P 500. The Dow up 1.6% today, and the Russell 2000 up 0.6%. So making some progress, but there's more progress to be made.
Yeah, and in fact, it was one of those situations where, I mean, if you look at, for instance, the Nasdaq Composite today, I mean, it was a gap up, and we're on the IBD Live show, and it's like almost immediately kind of starting to fill in the gap. It didn't go negative, but we
Mhm.
quickly saw the gains fade, and we closed in the upper part of the range for all of the indexes, well in the upper half of the range, I should say, and even better for the S&P 500, maybe in the upper quartile, as well as for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. But it's one day, right? And it's a Monday. Sometimes when you gap up, Allie, you were referring to Mike Webster, how he kind of hated the gap up Mondays because you sometimes saw them fade so quickly. So you might have gotten excited at the beginning, but that's not the way it closes. In the same way as we were kind of waiting for how today closes, I think we're going to have to wait and see how this week closes. We still have a lot of earnings coming out for some really big names, and that's going to potentially sway things a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. So with today's strong gains, the NASDAQ is on day two of a rally attempt. And so even though we are getting an oversold bounce, the reason why it's not time to get aggressive yet, Justin, is because we're waiting for a follow through day signal. We want to see those institutions showing us proof that they are coming back into the market and supporting things because we want to be following the big money. There have been a couple of failed follow through day attempts, a couple of bounce attempts, a couple of rally attempts, and nothing is sticking as of yet. So it's a time to collect enough evidence before we really start diving in.
Right. Yeah, exactly, Allie. And I mean, the fact is, let's put this in perspective. We got below the 200-day moving average line on the NASDAQ composite. That's not a good sign when you're trading below that. And we're right there, right? So
Yeah.
this is kind of a do or die situation. Can we get back above this level? I was really kind of looking for it to also get above Thursday's high, and we have, we didn't close there. We got above there intraday again, kind of at the open, but we weren't able to hold that level. So I'd like to see it make some progress and hold above those levels, maybe even get back up to 13,000. And remember, it's not about trying to catch the bottom here. It's really about getting that evidence that things have turned. And
Mhm.
we've got, as I said, we've got a lot of earnings coming out. We've got the Fed, not much expected there in terms of a policy change, but there's always what happens at that press conference, and if there's any changes in wording that can make a difference. So yeah, there's still a lot of things that need to get done. And look, for a while there today, I mean, we were looking at RSP, which is the equal weighted S&P
Yeah.
500, and that was looking pretty dismal for a while. It was down, and looked like it was going to potentially plumb to new lows. And the reason why we've been paying attention to RSP and a lot of the other equal weighted is it just kind of goes to show how the breadth has been. Now, breadth wasn't too bad today, even though there were a lot of the heavyweights that were leading the charge in terms of the move up today. You still had advancers trump decliners by about 2 to 1, a little bit better than 2 to 1 on the New York Stock Exchange, and a little bit under 2 to 1 on the Nasdaq. So again, we'd like to see some more power there. We just really haven't seen that quite yet.
hmm And here's a look at QQQ. It, of course, holding up better with that mega
Yeah.
cap tech weighting. Didn't come down below the 200-day line. So it's trying now to get back to the lows from late September.
Mhm.
The Nasdaq still has a bit more progress to get to that level. So something
Yeah,
we're
the
keeping tabs on.
13,000 is pretty important for the
Yeah.
Nasdaq Composite. Qs don't have as far to kind of get to that 350 level, which
hmm
it kind of hit back in September, but also back in August too as a low. So that'll
Right.
be an interesting area to see what the index does around there. Over on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, that was up, a decent amount. Getting back above Friday's high, but still not above Thursday's high quite yet. And, that has some recovery work to do. Remember, this is only 30 stocks. It's price weighted. It can get, easily affected by, just a few names. And then over on the Russell 2000, this has been the biggest cause of concern.
Hmm.
A lot of times we use you can use the IWM, but we have the Russell now available live. And this one is still an inside day. And I mean, this is
It's right
at
there. Yeah.
lows from 2022, so that's not a good sign. And of course, this one is a lot more, I guess, sensitive to the 10-year Treasury yield, and the small caps kind of requiring a little bit more debt loads. And if you make debt more expensive for them, that's gonna hurt
Yeah.
them, as well as the valuations that have those future future earnings growth discounted because of higher yields in the 10-year Treasury. But the 10-year Treasury yield didn't make too much of a move today, so that was kind of a nice sign, and maybe one of the things that allowed
Right.
the index to make a little bit more progress.
Yeah, exactly. Let's now go to XLF, just briefly highlighting financials. XLF up 1.8% today. And this is another group that has been struggling, but what do you make of what we're seeing in the group now?
Well, and this is one of my cautionary tales: is be careful when you're seeing some of the sectors that are leading, and some of the stocks that are leading, but their charts look terrible. So again, we have kind of our Magnificent Seven. A lot of these stocks that are above their 50-day moving average line still, or getting above that. That's something we're going to talk about today. But you also have the majority of the stocks that are still below their 200 days, below their 50 days. And so sometimes you can get these rallies that happen, and you're like, why am I not seeing setups? And it's because it's a lot of junk that's kind of leading the charge. So, for XLF, for instance, look, Berkshire Hathaway, BRKB, that's one of the biggest things, and that's getting support at the 200-day moving average line, which doesn't look too bad. But some of the other heavyweights in there are, JP Morgan, which, I mean, that was up a decent amount today. Bank of America was up 2%. I think Goldman Sachs was up like almost 4%, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
But all of those are below the 200-day and the 50-day moving average lines. Nothing exciting to see there. So if if that's what was driving XLF higher, in addition to Berkshire, which doesn't look too bad, that's not something to get too excited about.
Right, and doesn't Berkshire have a lot of it's like Apple and
Insurance,
insurance, right?
right?
Is like
Exactly.
the things. It kind of looks like how Apple looked, with that steady uptrend earlier in the year,
Yeah, and I mean
kind of
insurance.
mirroring that. And then, yeah,
Yeah,
insurance has done
yeah.
well
If you look
lately.
at KIE, that's the Spider S&P Insurance ETF. That's also gotten supported its 200-day moving average line recently. So yeah,
Yeah.
very good point there, Allie.
Just some notes there.
Mhm.
Okay, let's take a look at Meta. So, when Meta's report initially came out after hours last week, the stock was up, and then the
And
reaction
then it
turned,
wasn't.
and then it wasn't up. And so it had a not so great open. I was just going to kind of remove some of the clutter here on this chart. But it had an okay close, I guess. It's not like it broke how Google did, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's
Mhm.
bouncing now, so it looks like the relative strength is kind of holding in there, Justin. What are your thoughts on how this one measures up in terms of watch list stocks we should be keeping on our radar?
Yeah, well, one of the points I wanted to make today is, look, just because something gets below its 50-day moving average line doesn't mean it has to drop off your radar completely. And whereas, yeah, that drop below the 50-day line might have been a cause for concern, here we are 2 days later, and we're right back up at that 300 level, and trying to make some progress above that 50-day moving average line. So I think that's worth keeping an eye on. That 300 level just seems very important in Meta right now, and the fact that we're trying to make progress is good. A lot of the stocks I was kind of looking at, hey, can it get above the Thursday high? Well, in this
Yeah.
case, it's well above its Thursday high, right? It's kind of in a different situation because it had that reversal on Thursday, and is trying to make some progress from there. But yeah, just to contrast exactly what you were saying with Alphabet, the parent company of Google, you know, this is one where, yes, it did cross below its 50-day moving average line, and maybe it can get back above there, but this is a different look. This
Yeah,
looks
look
like
how it did
something,
it. Yeah.
right? The how is just as important as the what, and
Yeah.
the how in this case was a very steep drop. That's the difference between a sprained ankle and a break.
Mhm.
There's sometimes a different recovery time, so you just have to be very careful and treat those
Mhm.
differently according to that look.
Right. And so if we were in an uptrend, Justin, or IBD recommended adding exposure, it seems like traders could use
Mhm.
a retake of the 21 day or a trend line break here for Meta as an opportunity to add shares.
Yeah, a lot of times, again, this with these stocks that have just kind of skirted around their 50-day moving average line, didn't give up too much ground. Even that cross above the 50-day moving average line can give you an early entry. And this is
Mhm.
something that Scott St. Clair has talked about a number of times on his podcast that he does for MarketSmith, or I should say webcast, I suppose. Um,
They should
but
turn it into a podcast,
yeah,
though.
exactly. It,
Okay.
it, it
Don't
almost
give me
is at
any
this point,
ideas, Justin.
as if though you're not busy enough. Um, but he's talked about this on IBD Live as well,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things where sometimes, look, it doesn't work the first time, maybe it doesn't work the second time, but sometimes it works the third time. And so as long as you're keeping your losses small, you can give some of these multiple chances, and then when it finally does work, that's
Mhm.
where your return well outpaces the small risks and the small losses that you've taken for the ones that didn't work.
Right. So, do you think maybe if this one closed a little bit stronger today, there are some aggressive traders, and who knows, maybe towards the open, maybe early on in the session, there were some really aggressive traders.
Yeah.
Meta getting back above the 50-day after that reversal, shaking off the earnings, shaking off the weakness. Perhaps they did nibble.
Mhm.
So
In a different
we'll
market,
keep
I
tabs
probably
on
would
it.
have been one of them,
Yeah. Right.
because
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, it's just as we said at the outset, okay, a Monday gap up when all of the indexes are below their 200-day line, and do you
Yeah.
really want to stick your neck out? Well, you know what, I'm a little bit okay waiting. So yeah, for Meta, I wouldn't mind doing that with a little bit more strength, but I want to
Mhm.
see it kind of get above 300, stay above 300, and I was looking for a little bit of a better close today.
Yeah.
All
Exactly.
of
Same
that
here.
power, the high happened at the beginning, and it just never quite got there
Exactly.
for the rest of the day.
Yeah. Okay. And this was also our stock of the day today
Yes.
by Ryan Deffenbaugh on the tech team. So
Mhm.
check that out, everyone. Let's go to Ollie, OLLI, seeing an RS line blue dot here, and earnings a month away. So a lot of the retail names, they're kind of later on
Mhm.
in earnings season.
Yeah, and look, XRT, just to show that ETF real quick. Look, it doesn't look great,
Mm-mm.
but you do have these pockets, it seems like, in the retail space that have been looking strong. Of course, one of Allie's favorites has been ANF,
Yeah.
Abercrombie and Fitch, because of the jeans. But I think Ollie's is also worthy of watching. It's one that also got below its 50-day moving average line, but this was very mild action. It still qualifies as a flat base because the depth was only 13%, in terms of that depth. So very shallow. And now we're right back above that 50-day moving average line. And look at that relative strength line leading the price into new
Mm-hmm.
high ground. So that's a big positive. Um, you know, let's not ignore the fundamentals. The fundamentals have been showing some really strong earnings growth down there, some decent sales and revenue growth as well. But yeah, this is definitely one that is high on my watch list because of, again, those flat bases are really attractive to me right now, where the relative strength is showing
Mm-hmm.
a lot of power.
Yeah. And a good volume profile here, too. And just one more thing to underscore that RS line strength is it's 5% below that left side high. 5%, and it already has a blue dot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
and it looked like it might have even gotten it like last week, so
yeah,
yeah.
probably.
Hmm.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay. Last on the list, FTAI. This is at the Aerospace Defense Group. Blue dot, carving the right side of a base and earnings out of the way.
Yeah, so I think we've seen a theme here, right? These stocks that are below their 50-day retaking it, relative strength, very high. This is another one where it's leading the relative strength line is leading the price into new highs. They are doing like the aircraft engine leasing and stuff like that. So yeah, this has broken a downtrend, gotten back above that 50-day moving average line. It's got some decent earnings growth. Now, granted, this one is a little bit different. You notice that little number sign. I guess that's what we used to call it, pound
Mhm.
sign. Back in the day. Now it's a hashtag. But that's something where it does note that you're getting that growth coming off of negatives.
Yeah, I'll
So
zoom
you have
out
to
there so you can see it.
yeah, you have to
Yeah.
treat that a little bit differently, right? So it's
Mhm.
not like it's growing from a small number even. This is something that's growing from a negative number. But it's still a good sign. And look, this is one that's kind of proven itself as having the ability to make a move. That was a really strong move that it had, from from for most of this year, and it's
Mhm.
really retained the bulk of those gains and really hasn't been phased by much of the corrections here. Even the last base was fairly shallow. It just is really not giving up much ground. So I think that is another factor here that's just making that relative strength look all the more powerful, especially that relative strength line really
Mhm.
trending very nicely.
So, Justin, where do you think this stock has been? I mean, it really hasn't been front and center in the conversation for us. I would say this year, even though it has been such a nice trending stock, is that because of the liquidity, perhaps here on the lower
Yeah,
end?
yeah, it is on the lower end, but it also could be one of those where by the time it kind of got on our radar, it was
Yeah,
like it
where's the
didn't
buy
give you a
point?
chance to buy.
Yeah,
So this is finally
pullback.
now a chance to, yeah, the pullbacks on the 50-day moving average line. But okay, that first pullback, and look, sometimes pullbacks are hard. What's hard about it is that pullback, in March. Oh, yeah, it's a pullback to the 50-day line, but you also had, banks failing left and right.
Yeah,
Was it one of those situations where you're like, oh yeah, I'm really looking to add exposure with banks failing?
right.
Yes, it worked out and you would have been, doing well afterwards, but it is tough to buy on pullbacks sometimes. So you
Mhm.
have to just kind of recognize that. But yeah, I think that's why it's probably not one that got talked about so much. Now, we started talking a lot more about aerospace defense with the Israel
Mhm.
Hamas war going on. I'm not sure how much of an effect that has on this with its just aircraft engine leasing, but certainly I think the thing that's important here is that it's giving you another chance with this flat base, a relative strength line that's leading, and so if things kind of come together, this might be the chance for FTAI.
Good stuff. Thanks, Justin. And thanks everyone so much for tuning in. That is it for today, but we will be back with more tomorrow morning on IBD Live. And we hope everyone joins us, investors.com/IBD Live for all the details on that. We will see you there and we'll also see you right back here tomorrow at the close.